circle block from the top. Okay, so we've already made a short, or I've already made a short on the outer forearm block. This is going to be very similar, but the circle block is a little bit more quintessential of the block in Tae Kwon Do or even just martial arts in general, so I want to spend a little bit more time on it. Now, two-handed concept here, we've talked about this a lot. Both arms are working together to help create more power. Also, the spiraling energy, that's really what I want to focus on here, because you have a lot of different points of circular or spiraling energy. The first is obviously the pronation of the wrist and elbow in this move. Notice that I'm trying to leave my palm towards me as long as I can until that final point of the move finishing. Now, I've also got both arms that in their own two-handed concept are creating spiraling energy. And finally, I have, once I add my torso, another point of circular or spiraling energy coming into this. So there's a lot of power being generated in this entire motion. From the loaded position, I'm hugging myself like with most blocks. My blocking arm is starting on bottom, and I'm going to be stepping out and making this block just outside my guard. So notice from my guarded position here, this block finishes just outside of it. I don't want it to be too far. I'm blocking with a long, straight arm right here from the knife hand position. We talked about how blocking and striking exist in relation to one another as a duality. How blocking requires the interaction between two forces, how striking requires no such interaction to exist. To me though, a strike is to require a block if we're to talk of a truly great martial art. I'm inspired by fight scenes where characters dance with one another, trading blocks for strikes and strikes for blocks. I like seeing this great battle between two forces and what comes out of their clash. Their friction drives us forward. A strong argument countered by another perspective. In this case, the counter can become a strike of its own. The block can become more than a block, and the strike is forced to take a step back. Today we finish up the month with one more block and one more strike. Let's get to it. Try it. Duality is a human construct. Day and night aren't opposing forces. The sun shines and the earth spins. Good and evil aren't these easy distinctions that we see in childhood. But I do think duality is an important construct, especially since it's one that we're often apt to use. It helps us make quick distinctions, but knowing this and knowing that things might be more complex is also an important consideration. I often find myself on this spectrum between good and evil, or between day and night. And I think it's helpful to take a step back and to find a broader perspective, to step off the line and see things with more nuance.
When Jin Yu chooses to make Shulian her enemy, we may be quick to dismiss her as young and foolish. However, from Jin Yu's perspective, the elders in her life have not shown wisdom in their actions towards her. From her parents' arrangement of her marriage to Jade Fox's desire to use her for her abilities. Not to mention one of the few people to treat her as a peer, Lo, would also be someone traditionally seen as untrustworthy by society. So we can understand why Jin Yu would have wavering trust toward those older than her. Out of this clash of perspectives, we witness the great battle played out between the two.
Bridge hand. So the first thing to notice here is how we set up our strike. From my knife hand position with my fingers and my thumb tucked tight, I'm going to be adjusting this slightly. First thing I want to do is get my thumb out of the way, or else it's going to get smashed. So I'm going to tuck it across to my pinky pad on the opposite side. The next thing I want to do is slightly turn my wrist so that I again have a better angle to get my striking surface. The point, the ridge between that pointing finger and the thumb. So with that striking surface set up in mind there, the actual motion is fairly similar to a punch. And you'll notice that with my strike that I just threw, it sets up the same with the two-handed concept, with the timing of my step, and with the final strike. You'll notice though that there is a slight curve inward of the strike, and that's because we're not striking straight on like a punch. Like if I were striking someone with a punch, it'd be towards their nose or their front of their face. This strike would be more towards the sides. If I had a board set up, it would be on angle so that I can come into the strike. So with that thought in mind, when I go to set up, notice here, if this is my point of contact, as I make this strike, I'm actually striking, my trajectory is slightly off target so that I can finally reach the target with a slight curve inward. Now that's one way to throw it. I've also seen this technique thrown with much more pronounced centrifugal force, swooping into the target here all the way from the side. Either way you throw it, the setup is the same, just like the punch from our side. We'll be coming into our target on an angle and then with a slight curve inward to find that striking surface of our ridge hand. If I make a swooping motion, it is a lot more pronounced as I come into the target on that side.